everybody, and happy Leading Change Thursday. I don't know if that's the thing. I gotta keep working on what the name of the specific day for Leading Change Live holiday is. But I'm really excited for this episode. I get the opportunity to sit down with three friends of mine who I also respect greatly in the content that they're creating, to have a conversation about literally one of my favorite subjects, and that's how to sell differently and step into the role of becoming your customer or prospect's favorite teacher through using online content to do that. But I'm not going to keep chatting at all of you beyond the reminder that as you're joining us, let us know who you are, where you're joining from, join in the conversation in the comments. That's the whole point of doing this live, is so that we get the back and forth with everybody who's joining us, even if we can't all be in one room. But we're going to start the around the world, or I guess country, it's not really world, figurative room, whatever, introductions. And Curtis, I'm going to come to you first to say a quick hello. If you could do an introduction and tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Great to be here. Thanks for the invite, Emma. I'm Curtis Goldsboro. I'm the president of National Insurance Inspection Services, and we are a loss control and technology company that serves property and casualty insurance carriers across the U.S. and a little bit abroad now. So that's me in a nutshell.
That's a lie. That's not you in a nutshell. Because if I could, I would go and zoom in on that little backdrop you've got with the perfectly positioned loss ratio hat and sweatshirt, along with the non-lit up sign. So please tell everybody who your alter ego is too before I hand it off to John for an introduction.
That there is a little bit of an alter ego loss ratio. Partially inspired by John, I must say. So I do a little bit of insurance / insurtech wrapping on the side, and that's a part of a content strategy that we'll dig into here shortly.
Just a little bit of it. All right. I'll let it slide. John, can you say a hello to everybody and give an introduction as well?
I can. And Curtis, you're making me laugh already, man. I don't know if I'm going to get through this or not. Loss ratio. Thank you. I'm John Lindsay, the president of Insight Legal Tech, and we provide software solutions for small to mid-sized law firms around the country, around the world. I've been doing it for the last couple of years. It's a new venture for us, and we're absolutely loving how it's grown. And we'll talk a little bit about how the social media aspect and social selling with Emma and her group has really fueled all the growth that we've experienced.
All right. And last but not least, Alex, can you do an introduction for everybody as well? And just as a heads up, so that you don't have it happen to you, you are muted.
Oh, no, I mute myself on purpose. So my space has awesome people working on the outside and cars coming up over here on the left. And no matter how hard I try, sometimes it comes through. So I mute myself a lot. And I appreciate that. I agree. I don't have an alter ego. I'm just me. I'm Alex, retail agent in Miami, Florida. I've been doing it for about 26 years. And, I'm not smart enough to knock on doors or make cold calls. So, Emma invited me because a little while ago, I learned that I'm successful if I start to try to be able to teach people online about insurance. And so we've been doing it now for about 7 years. And that's become a big part of who our brand is, how we do things. And so just humbled to be a part of this amazing group of people.
Well, thank you all for joining me. And for everybody who's popping into the comments, I've got Dan, who's here in Madison, Wisconsin with me. We've got Jim joining from Florida as well. Keegan just loves you, Curtis. I don't know where he's from, but he's here for you. And I see some other people coming into the comments as well. And yes, Dan, we can talk a little bit more about Alex's custom wallpaper behind him. We'll make sure to make that question come up as we're going as well. But I want to get the conversation started because I think, one, I always like to start with a little bit of definition work, but also I think when we start talking about something like social selling, for some people, the selling part makes their heckles rise because they're uncomfortable about the idea of like trying to sell. For some people, the social side of it makes their heckles rise because they're terrified to go out onto social media. So when we jam those together, plus like sprinkle on the idea of like thought leadership and influencers and like all of these other things, I think that there's admittedly like a little bit of a tough sell on our end to get people excited about the strategy. So Curtis, from your perspective, can you share what social selling is and like maybe what thought leadership is and how it's kind of played into your strategy?
Yeah, I can share a little bit, and I'd be curious to get everyone else's thoughts on this, because I certainly don't feel like I'm the expert on the call. But I have learned a ton just over the past year, honestly, and a lot of that has been trial and error, and trying to think outside the box and not be afraid to take some risks and chances on kind of putting myself out there. But your comments definitely resonate with me, Emma, because I am not a salesperson. I hate sales, quite frankly. I survived somehow 5 years in the retail agent space, Alex, and so I have mad respect for agents out there. I did it for 5 years and learned that I am not a salesman. I wish now that maybe I had been more in line with your strategy, Alex, in my agency days. But yeah, I think from a when I think about the terms social selling and thought leadership and influencer, etc. For me, I've realized that it's really just all about two different things primarily, right? It is, number one, capturing attention, right? And if you don't have people's attention, then you can't sell to them. You can't provide any messaging to them. You can't introduce yourself. You can't teach them, right? And so, capturing attention is an essential part of the process. And then secondarily, I would say building authority, right? And that is, when people buy from people, right? Ultimately, for any of us that are selling anything, right, we are selling typically in a whether it's a B2B space or even B2C for Alex's scenario. People need a solution, right? They're looking for solutions, and they want to purchase from someone that they like, someone that they can relate to, and someone who has expertise to solve the problem that they're trying to solve. And so I think, those are kind of the things that surface in my mind, when I think about the idea of social selling and the value that it can provide.
So John or Alex, certainly if either one of you have anything to add to kind of like the definition side, I think from my perspective, Curtis, you touched on the idea of teaching and kind of our philosophy and like what the line that James used to trick me into sales 10 years ago was that the best salespeople are teachers. And for anybody that doesn't know, I used to be a teacher, and he helped me frame sales in that teacher mindset and in the capacity of, if you believe in the product you're selling and the problem you're helping people solve, all you have to do is teach them how to solve the problem, and then it won't feel like selling. And that was always a part of my strategy, even before I started creating content. And then when I got to step into content, it was like, oh, look at this whole new way to educate all of these people, whether they buy from me or not. And like my little teacher heart got very happy. And then my little sales heart got very happy because I didn't have to do all the things like cold calling or interrupting people or pushing or all of the things that make people uncomfortable about sales. Those things got to fall away, and I got to focus just strictly on educating people, customers or not, and then like helping people solve their problems. So Alex, John, anything to add there before we kind of continue on? Because I saw another question come into the chat that I'd like to bring up too. All right. So Dan asked, is it possible to go too far outside of the box? He's not asking for himself. He's asking for a friend. And maybe that friend is John or Curtis. I'm not sure.
Well,
But
I will. I've seen Dan's content, and he likes to push the envelope. So I think he probably already knows the answer to that question. But I have to toss that to John. I think John is probably the best positioned to answer that. And if you've seen any of John's content, you know why he should answer this question.
Yeah, and I think the answer probably is yes, right? I mean, there's a line someplace. I'm not sure. I've probably crossed it a few times, and Curtis, based on what I've seen from you jumping off ladders recently, you've probably crossed it a little bit as well. But I think there is a line, right, where we're trying to do, at least from my perspective, trying to do a few things. You had mentioned Curtis capturing attention. Obviously, you can't do anything. You can't deliver value to anybody, get to know them, or have them get to know you if you don't get their attention. And so, doing the things that we do to get their attention is critical because they have to stop and spend some time. And if there's 1 billion people on LinkedIn alone, you've got to do something, slightly different to be able to capture that attention. So we do. But I have also had people get on the phone with me after they've seen some of the things I do and go, "Wow, you don't sound as dumb as you look." And so there is right. We are experts in our fields, regardless of what people see from the persona online, right? And so there's a healthy balance there somewhere that says if you go too far, I think you're going to lose people's respect. You're also going to kind of capture the entertainment side more than you are the value side. I mean, we try everything that we produce, and I'm sure you guys are the same way. We try to make sure there's value in it where we're giving them something. There's a reason to tune in, even if it's a stupid song and a wig and all those things. Underlying, there's a message somewhere, whether it's about technology or legal or whatever we're trying to get across. And we want the value to come through, but we also would like you to laugh a little bit and then understand that, ours is strategic, right? I mean, we're in the legal field here, and it's historically and traditionally a little stuffy. So we felt like, people could use a good laugh. So as long as you keep it clean, don't push the boundaries. We're not going into the R-rated stuff. We're a Disney company, or we're G-rated videos, company. Right? Yeah, so there is a line, I think, and we try to respect that, not offend anybody, but be as silly as we can possibly be, still deliver the message without looking outlandish. And I don't know if we, I can't ever know if we've done that because a lot of people won't necessarily tell us. LinkedIn is very polite. So we try to gauge that ourselves.
I think John is being very, very kind. So to borrow from Woody in Toy Story, that wasn't jumping off a ladder; that was falling with style.
That's a good point.
But that being said, I think how far outside the box goes to whose attention you're trying to capture. We sometimes get stuck, especially when we're talking about social selling, right? In the belief that somehow selling online is fundamentally different from walking into a networking group and trying to do the same thing there. We're all trying to capture attention. And the difference of how far we're willing to go is going to matter as to whose attention we're trying to grasp, right? For some folks, it may be a shock jock, right? They are very, very good at capturing a specific group of people's attention. Other people do it as a thought leader, right? I'm not a particular fan of words like influencer or thought leader. I think those are names people give themselves versus names that they should probably be given, right? Given a set of circumstances. But at the same time, some people are deep thinkers and they're able to capture some attention doing that. And as long as that aligns with the folks who they're trying to capture their attention, it really doesn't matter how far you go as long as you don't upset the primary people you're trying to get to.
I think that's also, there's another element of this too, Alex, that goes hand in hand with that. And that's who you are, like, at your core, and like what's makes sense for you as a creator or a seller or those types of things. And James and I talk about this a lot. For anybody who has met us as a couple, there's lots of overlap and personality and things. Like, we're both salespeople. We both now are entrepreneurs, like all of these things that are similar, but we also communicate very differently. Our style of content is very different. And so James is more of a writer. He is more stoic in how he shows up to the whole wide world, whereas I am not quite as far as Curtis and John. But like, I'm not afraid to do things that like are a little bit more like outrageous or kind of push the envelope a little from like the attention grabbing side of things. But there are people that resonate and are drawn to James and James's type of content, and people that are drawn to me and my style. And that's part of the beauty of social selling is if you are yourself and you create the content that resonates with that ideal buyer or the right type of buyer for you, selling becomes this really natural thing because like Curtis said, people buy from people. So if you're creating the kind of content that you like, that offers the kind of value that your ideal buyer is looking for, they like you and they want to buy from you. And it's okay that you're a rapper or you're doing things like, one of my videos is laying down in the road in the rain. Like those types of things like get people's attention, but it gets the right kind of people's attention and the right kind of people want to work with you because you have that like back and forth kind of like energy that they're interested in. Alex, we've been talking a lot about like the shock value and some of like maybe some of the more outrageous side of things with Dan's question here. But you create a lot of really great, very valuable pieces of content for people that are looking to buy insurance. And like specifically, this is something I'm really passionate about because I don't think there's enough people doing exactly what you're doing. But can you talk a little bit about like the journey that got you started with creating content?
So similar to some of the stories here, I don't particularly find myself being a very good salesperson. And so I needed to find a way to be able to capture attention while at the same time, hopefully putting some value out there, right? So for us, it was always give something first. John mentioned it, you're always trying to give something away. And I think that there's a lot of confusion. I mean, that honestly, the industry is ripe for the type of content that I create, only from the perspective of people have an enormous amount of questions about their insurance and they are very uncertain about the process. So it was very easy to kind of come to a point where I'm like, well, if I start to create something, it should be something that gives people what they're looking for. Marcus Sheridan, they ask, you answer, right? People have questions. If you answer those questions, you'd be surprised how much attention that sends your way. And so when I started to create content, initially it was just purely insurance educational content. And that kind of ended up morphing into more a business educational content, where I, as opposed to being the expert, in these two chairs that you see behind me, interview different people that matter to the businesses I'm trying to attract, answering questions that I get asked but have no business answering, and getting a subject matter expert to answer that question on my behalf. And you'd be surprised just how valuable some people find that. And the reality is one of the biggest benefits it's gotten is that it positions me in a place as someone who cares about their business beyond what the product it is that I'm selling. So when I start having the conversation about insurance, there's an inherent trust that goes with it, where as I'm educating, they kind of just take a little bit more faith in what's going on. And also it's part of who we are, right? Like education is not, I wasn't a teacher. My wife is a teacher. But at the end of the day, I've always have a curious heart. And my father, being a small business owner, always had a million questions about, running a business and didn't always have access to that information. So I think it just made sense to me that if I'm going to start building something and I don't have the pizzazz of a loss ratio or willing to go that extra mile to lay down on a raining road, it was something that I could do that people wanted and needed, and thankfully it resonated. So I just kept doing it.
But Alex, you're so sincerely yourself when you make your content. And I think that shows, and you do have some fun content. Like you guys did the Star Wars video, and don't poo-poo the stuff that you've done. But I think it's important to recognize that it doesn't have to be over the top to get attention and provide value to people. And I think that's why I really like this combination of everybody here. And like Curtis, we've talked about loss ratio, but I also wouldn't mind diving into the idea of communication through meme too, because you offer a lot of value and spark a lot of really interesting conversations with memes as well, beyond the rap videos. And so, all of you guys have very different content styles and different content styles than even I do. And I think that that's a nice like mix to bring together and highlight that it is kind of figuring out what works for you, what you enjoy creating, and what resonates again with those kind of like ideal buyers. There is, John, I've got like my scheduled question that I want to come back to with some of the content specifically around like how you guys kind of make sure to put those nuggets of value in. But I do want to come back to a couple of questions that have come into the comments. And I'm just going to flash it up here because it's a big old guy. But I think the question here is like, do you need to only have this content available on social and in front of people in terms of like social media content? Or is there a way to, I think this is kind of a question of like building your personal brand in person and having these relationships and like kind of some of the benefits that come from social selling with that personal brand being in the real world. And so I certainly would open it up to any of you guys, but just to get us started, first, Marilyn, let us know if that's not the question, because I want to make sure I'm actually addressing it. But to me, your personal brand is what enters a room before you do. It's your reputation. And the benefit that social selling and creating a personal brand online has for you is that you can build that quicker and at scale in a different way to build trust than we've ever been able to do before. And so when you look at like building that personal brand traditionally, it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of boots on the ground physically at all of these events constantly, and being the type of personality that can draw attention and draw those people to you in a physical environment. For someone like myself, who's in her early 30s and in like insurance and tech and all of these other things that are incredibly male dominated, being able to build that reputation the same way that someone's been in the industry for 50 years has, that's a giant mountain to climb. And truthfully, I don't have the patience for that. So I took to social media to do that. But I'd love to hear from you guys, like what your thought is on like how to build this personal brand or some of the benefits that come from social selling in person.
If I can, I mean, just to kind of piggyback off of that, because for me, it was always about building a social brand to help my in-person work, right? And so one of the ROIs that people always ask me, that's the number one question I get, is like, is it worth it, right? And I go, well, this is what it's like when I go to a chamber event. If I'm going to a chamber event, usually everybody's got a name tag. It's got your name. You're kind of awkward. It's kind of hard. Like, hey, how do I introduce myself? I say insurance. As I say what I do for a living, and you know, that whole thing. But it started to shift over time as my content started to grow, where now when I go to a chamber event, more often than not, I'll be talking to someone I know who will then walk me to another person and says, have you met Alex DePazzo? Have you seen the stuff he's doing online? And it just creates this opportunity where as opposed to having to introduce myself, people are introducing me. And so what it does is people give a certain weight to the willingness of an individual to do a thing. And if you do that thing, you know, I appreciate your comments, Emma, if you do that thing, most like you, right? Like for me, the reason that Alex is the same guy you see here, as you see at the chamber event, as you see at church, right? So we're all the same guy, is because that I don't have to, if I'm anybody else, then I have to be that person all the time. That was never my goal, right? I never wanted to be, I don't want to be an influencer. I don't want to be a thought leader. I want to be the guy you come to with your insurance questions. And so I created something that allows it to seep into the real world, and where people say, hey, this is the guy you go to ask insurance questions to. He's not going to be a pushy sales guy. He's going to give you a straight answer. And then, you know, the product sale comes as a natural result.
John or Curtis, anything to add there? Otherwise, I've got, go
yeah,
ahead.
I would say the same thing. I mean, I would say, you know, for me at least, you know, Alex, just like you, I'd be on the wall at one of those. If I even would attend those, I just wouldn't really do that, right? Because I'm an introvert. It's not my thing. So what the social selling has allowed me to do is put out, as you said, the persona where people will say, hey, have you seen how outlandish this guy's videos are? You got to talk to him. It's given approachability to somebody who ordinarily maybe somebody wouldn't come up and talk to me in that capacity. And so you get to be human. It's broken down a lot of the barriers. It's created a trust element, almost like you watch people on TV. You think you get to know them a little bit, right? I think that same thing happens here when they see you enough, they see you consistently, and they say, well, I think I could, I don't drink beer, but they say, well, I could drink a beer with that guy, right? So I think there's an element of trust that's being developed there when you consistently show up as yourself. people know how to approach you because they feel like they know you already. And I think that gives you an enormous advantage in business.
Definitely. So, John, I do want to come back to this question of, like you mentioned, when you're creating these videos, even when they have big personas and big wigs and all of the other things associated with them, you're looking to kind of put a nugget of, at least a nugget, if not a lot of value into the content. And there was another question Jim West asked, and I'm going to kind of like combine his very big question here with the one that I had. But his question was basically like, how do I build that trust? And I think trust and value in content go side by side. So I want to just like pick your brain a little bit about what you see as valuable content and how that helps you build trust within your sales cycle.
Yeah, for us, it's really simple, right? I mean, we do, and I think somebody said it here. I don't know whether it's Curtis or Alex said it, but somebody said it where, you have to know what the pain points are of the audience that you're serving and the customers you're trying to serve. And so, we do a really good job of asking. I mean, it's really easy to find out what's bothering firms, what's holding them back, what they're intimidated by, what's not working. And then we try to find ways to be able to work those answers into our parodies and skits. So it'll be about technology. It'll be about legal tech in particular, maybe, but it'll be about something that's sharing a solution, whether it be our digital twin selection or our jury selection or whatever the solution is that we're trying to promote that day. It's going to have something in it that says, we know because you've told us this is a pain point that you have. And well, it might be, Bruce Springsteen, we're singing a song. We've embedded the message in, if you're listening, about the problem that you have. And so people connect to it. And so the magic for us, and I'm sure you all experience this too, doesn't really happen right there out in the open. It happens in the direct message side. Somebody says, wow, I've got that problem. I don't want to say it in public, but in private, can we talk? And that's where the whole magic of this starts, is that you can throw out that, hey, we've got a solution. You can throw it out in a way that people are captivated by it, entertained a little bit, but enough that they want to reach out to us. And so I think that's the tie-in to it. You add the value by making sure you understand what it is that you're talking about, and you make sure the audience is aligned with that as well.
Great. So Curtis, I got a question for you. Is creating content and doing social selling easy?
It is not easy. It is not easy at all. And I posted a little bit about this morning. But it's an incredible amount of work. It just is. There's no two ways about that. And I think for different people, different aspects of it probably come easier, right? Like in my case, it just so happens that I, had some video production background, right, and experience in my professional life before insurance. And so, that was a skill and talent that I already had that I don't know why I waited so long to leverage that for business and for social selling. But that's the piece for me that is kind of natural and comes easy, right? But then there are other pieces of it that are way more difficult for me, right? Like I am not a great writer at all, and so for me to craft a few paragraphs of text to go along with a meme or a video or whatever the case may be, that's the part that takes me the longest, right? And so my post this morning was quite lengthy, and that took me over an hour to write 5 paragraphs of text. So I think there's no, it's not easy, but everyone has their own unique, talent and skills and abilities. And I think there's definitely value in, people individually understanding what they're naturally good at and, figuring out a way to leverage that in social selling and to create content that, that is compelling and that ultimately, drives desired results. So, it's not easy, but I guess the other thing that I would add, and again, I posted about this morning, but, I have just made content creation. It's a part of my job description. Right. And it's like, maybe that's a bit unique because I'm the president of a company. Right. But Typically that would be a marketing department and team and whatnot. But for us, just the way that it's played out is, I've kind of taken on that role. And, as I mentioned, it's not something that I get to when I have extra time, right? Because none of us have extra time in business, right? But it is a normal scheduled part of my routine, and I make it happen, right? The same way that I make 100 other things happen in the business on a daily basis. Content creation and the social selling strategy, for me personally, is a priority, right? It is just as important a part of our business as many of our other core functions and services that we're providing. So no, it's not easy, but if the ROI wasn't there, I wouldn't still be doing it. It absolutely is. It's absolutely worth the time and energy and effort.
Well, and I think one thing that you just made a point of is that it's a priority for you. And I always sit with, whenever I use the term, I don't have time for that, I always sit with it's not a priority, and see how that feels and see if it's something that I like or not. And especially for salespeople that maybe are sitting in a position where they're using all of the traditional tactics that, any and all of us have used in the past to grow businesses. When you start to look at it as, I'm going to make content creation a priority, eventually, once you've built up that practice, some of those other things that you maybe don't enjoy or are no longer working at the same clip start to drop off. And it's not that suddenly you're making content a priority over other things. You're just shifting your strategy towards an area that works better based off the way that people buy. So this isn't just me going back to what you said, Alex, you're not, super driven to become an influencer. This is not me encouraging an army of influencers. I don't even think of myself that way. This is me telling you people buy differently than they used to. And anybody who tells you that that's not true is living under a rock. Because if you think about any sort of buying process that you have, there is a digital component in it now. Even if the purchase itself is not taking place, you wouldn't go buy a car without looking at some sort of review online. You wouldn't buy a pair of, maybe this is the girl in me, but I wouldn't buy a pair of jeans without looking at reviews of what other people say or videos of what they look like on someone with my body type. I don't, every purchasing decision that we make has some sort of component of a digital experience in it. And even if that component is your prospect or customer going to your LinkedIn page and looking at it before they meet with you, because all of your traditional tactics work, if they show up and you don't have a banner image and you have a picture that looks like it was cropped from a wedding 15 years ago and there's no content there, they get onto the meeting with you and you've gained 40 pounds and you're 10 years older. Uh-oh, Curtis, your battery is exhausted.
His battery should be exhausted with all the crazy stuff he's been doing lately. I'd be tired too.
The battery's exhausted.
You wore him out, Emma.
Yeah. But I think that there's, you just think about the way that you buy. And my last little rant on this, we were meeting with a client a couple of months ago and I got onto the call and the first thing that they said to me is, I feel like I know you already because I've seen all of your video content. And I was like, oh, great. And then we continued on to the conversation and we had just done a bunch of audits on their sales team's LinkedIn pages. And they were like, yeah, but our buyers, I don't know if they're really using LinkedIn to make decisions. And I said, I'm going to call you on it a little bit. You just told me that my content makes you feel like you know me and that you clearly looked at my LinkedIn before meeting with me. So why do you think your clients are doing anything differently? And then they had to stop and sit with that for a little while and think about how that impacts their buying decisions and how the choices of who they work with. So you are no different than your clients. So think about the way you make buying decisions and then use that to fuel your strategy of how you sell, whether that's social or not. But that's why I exhausted Curtis's battery going on my rant. So we've got about 10 minutes left, and we've pulled in enough questions here from everybody else that I want to now switch gears to kind of going back around the room, and we're going to go in reverse order. Alex, starting with you, to talk a little bit about like the benefits that you've seen from the social, and we've all touched on it a little bit, but like especially you, Alex, you're kind of in this spot where you've got B2C and B2B and you're creating content. Like, what have been the outcomes of your content strategy for your business?
Well, to be 100% honest, most of it I was making it up as I was going along. I mean, the reality is I was looking for a solution, and this fit, in a lot of different ways, but I ended up finding out a lot of the things that we've been talking about, right? So sometimes, the benefit isn't because the first thing they did was look me up on LinkedIn. The benefit is the fact of when someone told them, hey, call this agency, they did look on one of the social channels to see what we were about, and they got confirmation immediately of what they had been told, and then that made the conversation when they got to me a little bit faster. Occasionally it'll be something like a direct, hey, they saw a video. It is extremely humbling to get an email from a prospect that says, hey, you explained insurance better than anyone else I've ever had to, so I need you to be my agent. And that actually does happen. Does it happen 3 times a day? No, but it happens. It happens a lot. And then when it comes to B2B versus B2C, I can't, I don't quite track how many times I'm talking to the main decision maker. So say the president of the company, the Curtises of the world, or I'm talking to the person that's gathering that information for the decision maker at the end of the day. But I can tell you that I do business and have gotten plenty of business through these processes from, the spouse of the owner who's helping the owner come up with solutions for their problem, to the person who doesn't know anything about insurance, who was tasked with finding these questions out and being able to come to the next step, to the actual individual themselves. So whether it's B2B or B2C, people have questions and they're looking for answers to those questions. And so because I answer them, I am there at that point, right? I'm at that point in the buyer's journey where they're like, I have a question, and I positioned myself because of time and energy, been able to position our agency, because that's another wonderful thing about the content I create. I rarely get a phone call for someone asking to speak to me. Most of the phone calls will come and say, I saw a guy on YouTube and I think I should be doing business with you guys. And they will talk to one of my CSRs. Like, no, because they believe that what they saw there is not just representative of me, but representative of the business that I'm a part of. And that's a huge plus, because I can't handle every call. It wouldn't scale at that level. So whether it's B2B or B2C, for me, it's kind of always been the same. I'm just trying to capture the attention of the individual whose job it is to answer those questions and then help them along the journey to the point where we get to the sale. And because I've already created a conversation with them before they even called the office about an educational process, right? Like, hey, we're going to talk about what this is, what this feels like, and what your expected outcomes are, and what your expected outcomes are at the actual end use of the product, right? So insurance is hard. And one of the hardest things is there's a huge time gap between that first time you buy the policy to that claim, right? It's rarely, hey, I bought a policy, I had a claim. Sometimes it could be decades between I bought a policy and I had a claim. And the success in my book is when they have that claim, if that expectation was set properly through the education and sales process, where whether or not that claim was paid exactly the way they wanted to or not, they were not surprised by the outcome, because they understood how to use the product to reach their goals and understood the risks they chose to take or the risk they chose to transfer, and either way, how that ended up working out for them. I mean, that's success, I think, in anybody's book. Did it do the thing you wanted it to, or the thing you expected it to do? So most of the people who we attract with this kind of marketing are already predisposed to asking questions and being able to have that experience.
Alex, I just got so inspired, and I hope all agents see the world the way that you do. Yeah. And not to make light of it by laughing at it, but that's the whole goal. And I hope that people recognize that that's the intention behind content. So John, I'm going to ask you very similar question. What has creating content done for you and your business?
Well, in terms of our Insight Legal Tech business, it's built the entire business. Everything that we have done, we've not done any marketing outside of what we do on LinkedIn. So every relationship, every partnership, every new piece of business, whether it's the smallest law firm, mom and pop in the United States, to some of the top 5 law firms in the world internationally, every bit of business that we've done so far at our Insight Legal Tech division has come through the work we've done here on LinkedIn. So it has been phenomenal. So I see some of the questions out there in terms of B2B, B2C. I can't speak to how it's going to work for everyone else, but I can tell you for us, it's 100% effective. There's been no need to expand into other, type of marketing, because this has created more business than we can do right now. And we can't grow any faster than we're growing. So it's been phenomenal. If you're not doing it and you're not taking advantage of this network, and by the way, it's free. So, Curtis is right. It's hard to consistently build content. My schedule, you guys probably know, I do one a week, right? So I'm probably the antithesis of the post every day, whoever the thought leadership saying you got to get out there every single day. I don't do that. I do one a week because they're too time consuming, and then just try to support others during the week when I have time. And that's been effective for us. So B2B, it's been phenomenal for us. I can't think of a better way to do it. And as a leader of an organization, I think the beauty there is they get to see and grasp the personality of the entire organization before they come into it. And I think somebody said it earlier about, you end up, I think it was you, Emma, that you end up working with people that you already almost know you're going to get along with before you even start. And that's a beautiful thing. So it is the best thing that I can't believe I didn't get here until now. I'm almost 60 years old. I should have been out here for years, and I didn't know that this existed. So shame on me. If you're not taking advantage of it, you need to be.
So Curtis, similar question, but with like a little bit of audience flair to it. So do you see that insurance carriers are taking humor well, or do they like more formal content? And what has your approach, which is almost all humor, whether that's meme or rap style video or anything in between from a fall off of a ladder, it's all got humor involved in it. So what has it done for you in your business?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo, what John said in a lot of different areas. But yeah, to address Shree's question, I think what I have come to realize is, especially in the B2B space, specifically with insurance carriers, there is so much noise, right? There is so much noise to have to break through. And again, I think that's what gets back to what I mentioned earlier about capturing attention, right? You can have the greatest messaging, you can have the strongest value proposition, you can be the leader in whatever niche you're pursuing within the insurance industry or insurtech or wherever your business sits. But if you're not capturing attention, right? If you're not getting eyeballs, if people aren't seeing your message, if you're not getting a seat at the table, then the most professional and the sharpest messaging, is right. You don't get a seat at the table, right? You're not on the radar. So, I think that's one big piece that I've realized, and just that has kind of, driven the type of content that I've been producing, is, hey, I've got to capture eyeballs, right? I have to, people need to know who I am. And then secondarily, I would say, and Emma, I had shared this with you, but, I have not had a single negative response from anyone higher up at any insurance carrier. It has all been positive, right? And just last week I was at the home office at the headquarters of a large top 10 P&C carrier, and it was fantastic. Like, we had hard conversations, and we had very serious conversations around underwriting strategy and whatnot. But at the same time, they asked me if I was going to show up at dinner as myself or as loss ratio, right? And which is just I never would have thought that in a million years, a year ago, right? But again, that relatability, and I think John, you had mentioned it earlier, just whether it's, on the legal side or certainly in the insurance side, historically, right? It's kind of a staunch and quite frankly, boring thing for most people. Right. And so to bring some energy to it, to bring something different, to bring some flair, some humor, smiles, laughter, right? Like, yes, we have, serious problems and issues that we're facing as an industry. But if we can't have fun addressing those things, like, we're all going to go crazy. Right. So, I mean, again, just getting back to the question, yes, humor, has its place. Could you go overboard with it? Yes, but I think that's where there has to be the balance, right? And John, you alluded to that, right? Let's have fun. Let's make people laugh. Let's make people smile. And then at the same time, we can have the serious conversations that need to happen. We can, have that thought leadership, address issues, present our solutions, and but doing all of that, kind of under this umbrella of like, hey, this is not boring, right? We're solving issues, we're making progress, and we're having fun while we're doing it.
The one thing that I'll add before I've got one final rapid fire question for you guys that came from Dan is on the B2B side. One thing that's really struck me, whether it's on LinkedIn or any other platform, is the reminder that people are people. Doesn't matter what title they have. And just because somebody sits in a C-suite doesn't mean they lose their sense of humor. Or just because somebody has a specific title doesn't mean that they are immune to the trends that we see of like enjoying to scroll some short form content. And Curtis, similar to what you said, like more on the TikTok side than LinkedIn, because I've been at the LinkedIn game for a while. Over the last year, I've had more than 4 videos go over 1 million views, all focused on change management and digital transformation. That's not like a super sexy topic. It's not. So I'm not Alex Earl I don't know if any of you guys know that reference, but like, I'm not like a multi-million follower TikTok account. It's just something like our jobs are such a big part of what we do. They're such a big role of like who we are as people, that people need an outlet to be able to attach to and make light of the things that are stressing them out and recognize that they're not alone and be able to get solutions to their problems presented to them in a way that breaks through the noise. And so do not forget that people are people and they want to see who you are as a person, whether that's at a dinner table when you're hosting something as a salesperson or online showing up and creating content that helps educate them. The way that we buy has changed, and you gotta start getting used to it, or you're gonna have a rough time. The last rapid fire question, because we're technically over time, and I'm gonna go like around the room because I think that Dan asked who, Curtis, would make your rapper Mount Rushmore, but I want each of you to give us one rapper that would make Mount Rushmore for you. So Curtis, I'll let you go first. Last ratio. Who would yours be?
I mean, there's really 2, but I'll go with a lesser known one. It would be NF.
Oh, lesser known. Okay. I don't even know who. Maybe I know. I don't know. John, your turn.
Well, I told you I'm days away from 60. So, I would probably just have to go, with the one you probably didn't pick, which would be Tupac.
Ooh, okay. Alex, your turn.
Chance the Rapper.
Ooh,
he would definitely make my it's one of the most authentic from my perspective.
And mine would be Lil Wayne. There's no beating Lil Wayne in my book.
There's so much Emma in that answer.
Oh yeah, 100%. Thank you so much to the 3 of you for joining me, and for everybody who joined us in the comments. From my panelists, there are a couple of questions that we didn't get to. So if you're able to pop into the comments and respond to people there, I'm sure they would appreciate it. But thank you, everybody, for spending my favorite morning of the month with me, and have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thanks for having us,
Thanks,
Emma.
everyone.
See y'all.
Take care.
Take care, y'all.